everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And I am completely surplus to requirements.
Mr.
Because I'm back.
Yeah. Surplus.
Yeah, Mr. Surplus.
Guess who's back? Back again. Fiona is back.
It's me.
Tell a friend. Fiona is really well known for giving us lengthy podcasts.
Fiona never shuts up.
We've been forewarned about this one, so that's pretty good. But I didn't. Yeah, I'm quite happy that you are here to provide a service to the podcast. Podcasting world, in so much that so when I looked at how many hours the games that you've played for the podcast have been, they are the meteor of the podcasting games that we do, and you know it was reflected in the last one that you did, was the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, the trilogy, and that got loads and loads of plays, more so than the normal hosts, which is semi-awkward.
That's probably fine.
but actually also fine. So
yeah, I'm just going to sit here and quietly eat Haribo.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like, it's super happy that, you destroyed our self-esteem?
People like you more.
It's nice, but I feel like you set me up for a fall here because, as no, it isn't the charm of, Mass Effect, that sort of, smash, marry, kill stuff that you can discuss. There's not a lot of that in Oblivion. In fact, there's pretty much none.
I mean, we've even had a little bit of feedback this week about Garrus's space junk that is, coming back into it. So
can either confirm nor deny.
Yeah. So that's the positive thing. So yeah, I think that you've been hitting mostly between 50 and 100-hour games for us, like Final Fantasies, Mass Effect, Ace Attorney Investigations. So we appreciate that because we can't.
Saves me playing them.
Yeah, no, I've not got the capacity to even think that long in a row. So so thank you. So we're happy to have you back.
Play them in one sitting.
Sorry, I won't be at
Don't
work
you?
this week.
Oh right, okay.
Cancel my 2:00.
Super less impressed now. But continuing the vein of then, what have you been playing recently of the lengthy girth? Video game.
As a woman, I have to just step in here and say those are two different things, and it's important.
Yes, yes. But then I did. Yeah. Okay. Oh.
But moving on, it's Oblivion.
I need to go talk to my wife. Anyway, yes, Oblivion. So
remastered.
So Elder Scrolls 4.
Yep.
Yeah, and you guys have a Skyrim map on your wall.
That's true.
Is there a what's the word? A thingy? A conflict of interest? That's the thingy with Skyrim. Is that your favourite Elder Scrolls, or is? Well, you can go on to obviously Oblivion.
I was going to say it to the end. But I think Skyrim.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's
Straight
okay. I think Skyrim was my big first Elder Scrolls game. I did technically. I think I did play Oblivion as a kid a little bit, but very badly, and gave up very quickly. And Skyrim was my first massive kind of RPG where you just go off and do literally anything, and you can spend, I think, maybe 130 or something hours in it.
Is that another neither confirm nor deny situation?
Very attractive in one of our early dates, actually.
It's very true. It was a very endearing quality. How many?
Well, you don't have a boyfriend, do you?
Velos, my game.
But there's a lot of similarities, and I think Oblivion has a lot of things in common. What obviously you would expect with it, which is a nice cosy feeling of familiarity.
It's interesting that you're saying about the Skyrim to Oblivion sort of timeline wise, because I think Oblivion was 2006, one of the games of the year, and then Skyrim was 2009, was it, or something like that? I can't remember, around that time.
Question.
Oh, I didn't look this up for you.
Oh no, but it's okay. Neither did I for me.
You think though? Is it
Yeah.
No, that's we're not that old.
But it's just
So
interesting.
we're not talking old.
Thank you. Yes, that's cool.
Definitely had 10 years though, because.
Yeah,
Was that not when they put out the special
Elder
edition?
Scrolls 6 trailer is 7 years old.
You are no longer surplus to requirements.
I'm useful again.
Okay, come back at the end and tell us some fun Skyrim facts.
Oh, what?
But it's just interesting to know, because I feel
action from this meeting.
I've had them all day. It's really good to be sat in beautiful weather, wonderful friends after a fully shit day at work, and be able to appreciate that. Just because I feel like there's a bit of a division between almost, I think people see Oblivion as an elder statesman, massively to Skyrim, but I'm sure there's only a couple of years difference. But you'll obviously, I know you're going into the detail about Oblivion Remastered.
Skyrim was 2011.
All right. Oh, okay. So it was a sizable amount of time between them. Then that's interesting. That was just me. Right, starter questions out the way. The floor is yours.
Okay. So I've pitched this review / stroll through Oblivion at what I've written down here as noobs and Fazz.
That's
I
me.
assume you haven't played it and
No,
don't have much
obviously
intention
not.
of playing
Jesus,
it.
no.
At what point does this
Skyrim,
become
did you-
performance art?
Soon, that's later.
Excellent.
I didn't dress up this time though because for reasons that will be common.
My arm is in the shop.
Yeah, just scale mail's really hard to come by.
I've seen one man in a sewer for 1 second, and that's my Oblivion experience.
Okay, well that's quite important, I guess. So you don't really know anything about it?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll do the boring bit first about the remaster, and then we'll do the actual game, which is the good bit.
Cool.
I don't really care that much about the stats, so I'm just going to give it the briefest overview for anyone who does care who's listening. But basically, it's a remaster, not a remake. Mm-hmm. So they've gone through it all, done some extra voice acting because there wasn't a huge variety in the original, bunged it all into Unreal Engine 5. We'll comment later how successful or not that's been. And it's got a nicer user interface, and it's got better levelling, and it's got that kind of good remaster feel. I was trying to think where else I'd felt it, and it was when I played the Mist remaster.
Oh yeah.
And I turned to you really confidently on the sofa a couple of years back and was like, do you know, this is exactly how I remember it, although not that posh. I don't know why it came out so posh.
You never sound like that. This reminds me of the good old days. It was never a slideshow.
I've been in your house. You both don't talk like that.
It's true.
But yeah, and then we looked at what it actually did look like, and it did not look like that at all. So I think what I'm trying to say is a good remaster makes you go, oh, it's always like this. Mm-hmm. And then you look back and go, oh my god, technology's come a long way. This is what it made me feel like in my head, but now it actually looks like it on the screen too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much the same. In the version I've got, which is the basic one, you also then get bundled in 2 bits that were previously DLC. There's a quest called the Shivering Isles where you go on some quest for basically a mad god, which is always fun, and another one where you're poncing around as a crusading knight, trying to...
Is poncing around their words or yours?
Might be how I played it, I don't know. You've probably got options to do it more sensibly.
A little bit too Monty Python.
There was something quite Monty Python about it, and the outfits didn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're basically going around, trying to defeat some evil on behalf of these knights that represent 9 gods. Mm-hmm. And I think the deluxe version that's out as well is a 10 extra in most places, and basically, as far as I can tell, just adds some extra quests for additional special armour and a little soundtrack and digital art book if you want that. So
So you played this PS5. Yes. How much did it cost PS5? Because I know it's
£50.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a question later. Okay. Yep, cool.
I don't know what it cost in 2006.
No. It's just cool. Fine.
Okay.
Written my
Adjust for
notes.
inflation.
Written my notes.
Written your notes. So my starter question for you, Faz, about the plot is, what do you think would happen to you? What's the most unlikely thing to happen to you in a high fantasy medieval setting prison? Because this is where we start the game.
Yeah. I'm getting some more sweets.
I imagine, so my only real video game prison sort of feels are the
prison feels.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to go down that channel.
That's your problem.
But yeah, probably getting a bottle of ketchup and making it blood a Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
Yeah, I imagine that's least likely because there's less ketchup in.
How many condiments are in prison?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what kind of condiments? Yeah, I don't know. I've not got a great feel for prison in the You could lick a rock, couldn't you? That's what they used to do. Lick rocks when you were in prisons in
Sure,
in the dungeons. You licked a rock.
Are you okay?
I'm done with the question, please. You're on it.
I didn't expect it to say this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Actually,
The correct answer.
the most unlikely thing to happen to you is probably what happened at the start of Oblivion. Now, minor spoilers, but everyone's seen this clip, apart from you, possibly. But, you know, you're in your prison cell, there's no information about who you are, what you've done, you're just in prison. These guards come in, flanked by the Emperor, and it's only Patrick Bloody Stewart.
Okay.
There happens to be a secret exit in your prison cell that they all go through, and for some reason, I wasn't really paying attention. I think because he likes your face, or he's maybe seen you in a dream. Good vibes.
He's
just like, come with me, you've got a role to play in this. Yeah, something about a portent, maybe.
Yeah.
Either way, though, don't get attached to Sir Patrick, because he's not long for this world. He gets murdered by assassins, but his dying request is that you take this magic amulet, find his secret illegitimate heir, and get his help to basically save the world.
I could not be fucked with doing that. Like, okay, if you let me out of prison or not, I'm like, no, I'm going back in. I'm all right.
He's your boy.
I'm your little bullshit.
So yeah, the rest of the game is basically you trying to do this, and the big threat to the world is these Oblivion gates, which are these like scary portals, unleveling like a pie symbol, and there's sort of like very like Eye of Sauron-esque flames kind of coming out of them, and they're basically portals to a sort of hellish dimension where all these Daedra that are basically demons roam, and they're going to come through and take everything over if you don't go and close them down.
Sort of like Weatherspoons.
What now? Wait, what? I guess.
I'm only playing.
Is it 2 pints for £5 in the
hellscape?
Because if it is, I'm in.
I mean, there are worse places. You know, having seen the hellscape.
I don't know. It's you have to go inside a few times to close them down, and they're like just uncomfortably fleshy.
Yeah, Weatherspoons.
I do imagine the floors are quite sticky, so there is that kind of overlap.
They just seem to pop up everywhere.
But yeah, that's basically the story, and I think one of the key differences between that and Skyrim is Skyrim, you're like this dragonborn, you know, you are this chosen hero of prophecy, you've got mystical powers that everyone's very excited about. Here, you're just some goon in prison at the right time, or the wrong time, depending on your point of view, in the wrong place. And it feels like you're sort of high fantasy role-playing that thing at work where like you work for ages on a really cool new idea in a presentation and everything, and then somebody with a slightly better job title does the bit at the end where they step up and deliver it. It's always clear that, you know, oh, I forgot to tell you, do you want to guess who is the Emperor's heir? Who is the natural heir to Patrick Stewart?
Oh, God.
Not God.
Yeah.
Close, though.
I need to think about this. Can I come back to this question? Because I want to come up with a good answer. Is it going to cost the rest of the podcast?
But how long do you want us to take?
I don't know. Like, at least.
All right, you've got 10 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Best answer.
Who would be?
What you got? Who would be a natural heir?
What, but from 2006, I don't know. Matt Smith? Like, that was like, you know, I'm just trying to think like an English actor. Like, it was like, you know, from the time that, when was he Doctor Who? It feels like, it's probably a bit early.
Later.
Yeah, that was it. That's all I got.
No, it's Sean Bean.
Okay,
Obviously it's Sean Bean.
Yeah, he's in everything, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, he's always getting murdered in medieval stuff, so you know, spoilers for all medieval stuff ever.
But it's always kind of implied that like he has the actual role to play because he's got the right bloodline, which is very important. If you try and put on the magical amulet at the start that Patrick Stewart gives you, it's instantly like, no, you're not the right person to do the fun bits. But you still have to run around doing all his like busy work for him, like, oh, I definitely need this piece of armour for this quest, but I do have to sit here and read this book, so if you could like just go to the other side of the map and then like just kill a few orcs and then like bring it back, that'd be nice.
I definitely fucked that up because because they're both in the Yorkshire Tea advert, aren't they? Yeah,
probably.
So, yeah, and I was a bit like, oh, now that would have been a link. It could have only been Sean Bean or Ricky from the Kaiser Chiefs, who, you know, he's fine. He's all right. I saw the Kaiser Chiefs. He'd be great, but you know, I don't know if he'd
would he be good in the Crisis?
Yeah, I don't know if he'd be, you know, any good in Cyrodill. Yeah. I know where it is.
You do. Well done.
Bam.
Nice
research done.
Also, for your sort of Skyrim, like, where does it fit? Next door, basically. So the whole place is like called Cumbria, I think, and then like Cyrodill is like this central part of it where Oblivion takes place, and then Skyrim is the bit up the north of the map that's all brutal and cold, and that's where you are for obvious reasons. Skyrim.
Is there a vision for that to become a globular whole at some point? Like, is everyone clamouring for that in like Elder Scrolls 6?
That's a theory,
They did it on Elder Scrolls Online, didn't they? Like,
Is that-
Yeah,
yeah,
you
I
can
don't
gain
know.
more
go
bits.
like bounce between them and stuff like that. It used to be, when I played it, a little bit more disjointed, but was all there in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I don't know if they're going to be,
That's just
joining it
interesting.
all together
Yeah.
in like the kind of the play style that you have in Oblivion and Skyrim.
Okay.
Compared to something like Elder Scrolls Online.
That'd be good if you kind of just went through like a portal, like as in between them both, and you just went from like one type of jank to a different type of like.
I bet there's some modder trying to work out a way of like doing it so that you go through these gates and you actually physically jump between the games or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Not us.
no,
not modding
definitely
that.
not me. But get on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys do it out there somewhere.
Credit us.
So you're out of the prison, newly tasked, and the good thing is you can just wander off and do whatever you like.
Okay.
It's one of those games where you could go and do the main quest, but that's, honestly probably not the best bit of this game, personally. There's a lot of kind of fighting things. The Oblivion gates that you have to go into are quite samey when you're inside, and I'm a bit sour because they're just quite hard. Things try and kill you a lot. It's just a lot of running past things very quickly to try and like eat the magical stone out that closes the gate behind you.
I mean, you're basically just being Sean Bean's PA, aren't you?
Yeah.
Basically.
That sounds like the best job.
But with no danger. So it's a good story, but it's not, I would argue, the bit that most people are going to remember, because this is one of those games where the good bit is actually what you can do just by yourself wandering around as like a free agent of chaos. So, first things first, Fazz, you're out of the prison.
Yeah.
You have to choose your class. It's important to, I think getting your class right is quite important, but not necessarily the star sign bit that you get given, which I think is quite unusual for a video game.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in
They're
Final
cute.
Fantasy Tactics, wasn't it? Was that not? Was that?
Oh, was
that
it?
what I played where they had star signs?
Yeah, there was something like that, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
So you got some generic races. They're kind of quite usual high fantasy ones, mostly kind of human-y ones, elfy ones, and then the wild cards of lizardy ones and cat-like ones. Whatever you pick, you will, regardless of, there's a lot more options for your character customization than there used to be. There's some cool things with like your hair color and different colors at the roots and the tips and that sort of thing. A lot more sliders, but you will still look like you've had some kind of really cheap plastic surgery and then just like subsequently been run over by a lorry. There are no good outcomes in the character creation, and that's not really changed. Bizarrely, this is kind of an improvement, because old Oblivion was definitely renowned for its really awful uncanny valley sort of. It looked like everyone had a spotlight in their face at all times, and like they had Botox in their eyelids and could never close them. Like it was that kind of,
Is it intentional that they've made it still shit? Is it all like, even with a little bit of improvement?
It's better. It's just.
I was going to say, because surely that's part of the fun, is it?
Genuinely, I think there is an element of trying to retain some of that spirit. Whether or not some of the stuff that I've seen while he's been playing it has been deliberate, I would hesitate to say. But I think I get the impression from little bits and bobs that I saw around the launch that it was a conscious decision not to polish the sort of back end of it too much.
Yes.
And I've got a whole section on jank for you in a bit.
Excellent. I love those.
So you've got a race which gives you some basic slight perks and like leanings towards what you might be good at. And star sign, I've actually already forgotten what that does. I think it's just a few extra bits of background perks. So one star sign might give you like a spell you can use once a day. One of them might make you really, really good at magic, but also really, really bad at resisting magic and things like that. Okay. So they're just like a little extra you put on top. The main thing's probably your class, because this defines like your 7 major skills that you have, and they'll contribute most to your levels because they increase faster than all your other ones. I don't want to go into all the leveling detail of why it's different to Oblivion, because it was a really opaque leveling system in the original Oblivion. It's not much less opaque now, but it's better. But basically the old one, you used to so I played the old one eventually, having tried it as a kid and abandoned it because I sucked. And then a couple of years ago, we picked it up again and I played it on Richard's Xbox. And I screwed myself over really badly because there's this initial... So the way that you set yourself up at the start for a character, I think, is really, really good. And you go through this dungeon and it gives you lots of opportunities to try out different play styles. You know, it'll teach you how to do some spells, how to, like, crouch and shoot arrows from the dark and stuff like that. And then at the end, there'll be a couple of bits where characters will say to you, looks like I'm travelling with a, I don't know, bard or a fighter or something like that, and then it'll show you what that is, and it'll match your play style, but you can always go, I don't want that. Yeah. But it gives you a prompt if you don't know where to start.
That's really appreciated by me as nobody. I'm like, I'd love that. Yeah,
it is quite cool. But I decided in Oblivion that I would do the opposite of my Skyrim stuff, which was all very shoot a fireball with one hand, hit somebody with a massive flaming sword with the other. You know, just to add insult to injury, and then sometimes I would like reanimate their corpse and have them fight their friends for me. I was like, no, I'm gonna...
No, I don't want that.
I was like, no, I should try being like a stealthy archer, because everyone says that's really good in Oblivion. Get sneaky, shoot people from a distance, pick locks. And I put my major skills to sort of those, and then I never bloody used them. And in the original version, if it's only your major skills levelling up that helps you level up overall. You can be as good in one of your minor ones as you like, and I don't think it really helps, whereas this remaster fixes that, so all of your skills levelling will help you level up overall. It's just that your major ones will push you further faster.
Okay, cool.
So you can choose a bit more, it's more flexible for your playstyle.
Just a question on levelling then, so that was like I guess... Again, the minimal amount of research or things I know about this game is that's like the thing that people talk about. Like you have like weird levels where you can be incredible very quickly on certain skills, or enemies can be really tough if you do. What's that like? And is it like that in this? Have they changed that a lot then, or?
So I think I think this is the same over both of them. The enemies level with you.
Okay.
But it does mean that in the original, if you had stuffed up your stats a bit and you weren't levelling very well, or you weren't levelling in the right stats, then you would have been a bit unbalanced facing the enemies, I think, if you were levelling. So, like, say I'd gone and been like, oh crap, I have to level up my bow, which I did for a bit. I spent ages pointing my arrow at a wall and just, like, shooting it to get some extra points. But then in the actual fights, because I hated using my bow, I went back to my sword. That would be a lower level. So I think that's where the problems came in, and this does resolve that. I think I haven't noticed any massive problems with enemies, but that's because also Oblivion lets you do that thing of, if you have massive problems with enemies, you can just run away, and you can run away into the nearest group of NPCs, and hopefully they'll kill them for you. I did at one point have like a wild bear, some kind of timber wolf, and also what appeared to be like a really vicious, like soul-sucking ball of light that I still don't quite know what it was, chasing me for at least 5 minutes across the countryside before I kind of kited it into a group of guards who just like dispatched it, and then just walked around like nothing was happening. I think one of them even said like, "Hello, citizen, all's well," and I was like, "Is it?" I guess it is now. Thank you.
Standard procedure.
I'm having a really bad day.
Yeah, so I think it's fixed. And I do really like that you don't feel locked out of stuff, because as well, and I was struggling to kind of compare it in my head to more recent games, and I just think a lot of games now don't necessarily, you level up as a whole, don't you? So it's not like if you are a stealthy person, that particular stealth skill levels. So Skyrim, for example, I'm pretty sure you level up and then you get skill trees, that kind of more familiar these days setup, where you'll have a certain number of points and you'll be like, oh, okay, I want to put it into my destruction magic.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't matter if I'd leveled up because of my sneaking. I could still put my point into destruction, which feels better for making it your own, but I think probably worse for feeling like you're really developing naturally. So Oblivion feels like you are practicing the skills and you're levelling up the skills, and those are the skills that are getting better, the ones that you personally use as your playstyle. which I appreciate. And there are a load of like bits around the map where places will have a training room where you can go and shoot spells at a board or hack away at a dummy or something like that if you don't want to hack away at random NPCs who didn't deserve it.
All right, fair enough. Cool, thank you for that.
You're welcome. So yeah, my second pointer for you as you exit the prison into freedom is horse schmorse. So it's quite a small map compared to Skyrim, I think, having kind of come back to it again. And I definitely think you get more out of it if you wander around the map and resist. So you can fast travel to some of the major cities already, straight out of the gate, and I can't remember if you could in the original or not. Possibly not. And the rest of the places you've got to discover them and then you can fast travel, so kind of standard. But the horse... Like, I spent ages trying to get a horse, and I was like, why have I done this? Because actually, the horses are a bit of a burden. I don't know if you've seen things about like Bethesda horses, like Skyrim ones as well. Same problem.
You're preaching to the choir here. This is developing into a little bit of a podcast theme at the moment. That after I was so angry about aggro in Shadow of the Colossus, I'm down on horses at the moment. So I'm all about hearing some horse bashing. If I'm going to be honest, like some whipping, maybe even.
Are we going to end up doing an entire episode dedicated to trying to find a half-decent horse-related game?
Well, we all know that's G1 Jockey 3, so it's fine. It's okay,
But they get you around the map quicker, but I think because, I mean, on the one hand, they can help you climb really steep cliffs because they've got just weird physics where, like, Oblivion and Skyrim, both the remaster and the old one, had this thing where if you sort of angled yourself from the camera to inclines that you couldn't initially climb if you just faced it and tried to walk up it, either you or on a horse, if you sort of go a bit sideways, you're sort of like diagonally going upwards. The problem is, horses die really easily if you fall off cliffs, and it's not always easily visible, even in the remaster, what a slope is sometimes. I don't really know why, but there were definitely bits where I thought I was climbing and I was falling. So it wasn't great. And I think you miss out on sort of the nice landscapes a bit more as well, because you can see a bit more in your field of vision. And it looks really, really nice. Like, the skies are beautiful. Everything looks quite similar to Skyrim, as in, like, the quality. So it's not made it next gen, it's kind of made it sort of PS4 but high end, I think. I'd probably say. Is that fair, do you reckon, from what you've seen?
Yeah, I reckon so. I think there's a bit more like what sort of graphical fidelity, I guess, when it comes to things like water. I think was probably the most noticeable. Water and lighting, particularly, like, I guess if you're playing it in the moment and all that kind of stuff, it might not necessarily have been quite easy to spot, but like as an independent observer, seeing things like a skeleton standing near a sort of a lantern, flaming torch, whatever, in a dungeon, like the lighting on things like that does look really, really good sometimes. And I think for my tuppence worth, that's where that benefit of the upgrade in like to the Unreal Engine has helped, is in those kind of moments. Yeah, because Skyrim, you got the anniversary update and it does look good, but I think the lighting's probably still a little step away from it. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think the lighting is where the effort's gone. Yeah. And yeah, I think just don't be me, because I spent ages trying to get a horse. A, didn't want it when I got it, really, because I had to keep track of where it was. And B, also, someone gives you a horse quite early on in the main quest and I'd forgotten. So, don't spend your money on a horse, basically.
Got it. Hate horses. Note made.
So this is another one of those games where you will just be constantly stealing things off people's bodies that you come across in mines and things. So looting is very important, but also you don't get a safe stash until you've got your own place to live. Or again, I think there's a bit in the main quest where someone offers you to use their chest, but if you put things in random chests, they will not be there when you come back. So that's a tip. Well. And I've written here, check your armour, because some of it lasts as well as cheap Primark undies in a hot wash. Your armour does degrade, and it degrades really quickly, so it does become quite annoying having to spend a lot of your money on repair. I think this is another thing where the game falls down a little, is some of that realism. I'm just like, I just don't want the admin. It's kind of like Mass Effect. It's like, I'm a big damn hero, or at least I'm the big damn hero's PA, so... Why do I have to spend?
This should be on expenses.
Exactly. Yeah. I could have some kind of company card. I just never offered one. excuse me, good sir, do you have a VAT receipt? Yeah, but it is better than some at crafting. So you can choose to like go down the real DIY route, or you don't have to at all, which I really appreciate, especially these days, because I think these days sometimes it feels like you're forced to craft.
Yeah,
and I hate that. Like, there are some things that I get really into crafting, but it's very rare for me. Like, normally that's a slow point of the game. So Oblivion, you can learn to repair your own armour with better skill. You can enchant your own weapons. I think it might have been Skyrim, not Oblivion, but I had a really cool spell on a Skyrim one that was worth my while, because it would suck out an enemy's soul as it killed them and set them on fire, which would then fill a magical gem, so I could recharge it straight away again, which I thought was the ultimate recycling. And not at all creepy. But yeah, it was... I think it's nice to have the choice. So again, like alchemy, you can do that if you want, or you can just go buy a potion like a normal person. There's too many plants. There are too many plants in both Oblivion and Skyrim. There's just too bloody many things that you can stick in a bottle. There's too many potions actually as well. I think I just need one for like all of my main stats. I just want one for fix my magic, heal me,
ether,
make
elixir.
me strong again. Yeah, exactly. And I don't want one for like... I don't want to be bitten by a vampire, realise that I'm poisoned and be like, oh my god, is that like... Is a vampire bite like... heal poison? Cure wounds?
Yeah.
Is it like, I think there's dispel disease or something like that, and I don't know which it is, because it doesn't tell me. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just guess. There's like smithing, and the one that I do like though, which I was again trying to think if other games I played had this. I don't think they do, and Skyrim didn't. It had all the other crafting, but I don't think it had this one, which was you can make your own spells. Okay. Which is awesome. That's cool. Because if you don't like the custom ones, no, you don't like the non-custom ones, they're only like one thing at a time in most cases. I think when I played it on the Xbox, I made myself a spell because I was trying to do the sneak thing, and I was very bad at it, so I needed a spell for all the help I could get. And I think I had one that made me invisible for a few seconds, but also gave me night vision. Okay. Which was really good.
Nice, yeah.
So how much customization is there in that then? Like, I guess there's obviously a set number of spells that you can create.
It's effects, not spells that you use. So I think any spell that you have learned or bought, you can then use that effect to make a new spell. Okay. And you can add a couple, I think it might be 2 max, maybe 3, but like the spells cost more to make and cost more to cast, the more stuff you load into them and the stronger the effect, so you don't want to overdo it or you'll have a spell you can never use. But it's really, really good. So if you're into that, I would recommend that. And why wouldn't you be doing spells in Oblivion? Like, why would you go in there and just be like, no, I just want to ride a horse around and poke things with a sword.
The sound like, the simple things in life.
So, you're out in the world, you've secured a horse or not, but you've travelled a bit, you've seen some sights, you've got some skills, you probably have decided whether or not you want to bother trying to ingest every herb you walk past in case this is the one you need for your potion. What else are you going to do while you're trying to avoid the main quest? You can join a guild. Okay. So there are a few guilds, and again, something I really appreciate about Oblivion versus more recent games, I'm thinking things like Fallout as well, is none of these guilds are really that kind of mutually exclusive. Okay. So Fallout, Fallout 4, right? There's, 3 or 4 kind of factions, and up to a point, you can participate in all of their storylines. And then there's a point where sometimes you have to choose one versus another one, at least. And he's nodding for everyone else.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I was still listening. I was nodding for my own notes later.
Yeah, because there's an Atomfall,
for the about 6 minutes that I'll do on Atomfall, which is what it deserves. No, but yeah, no. I'm taking notes because there's quite a few things that, funnily enough, like it's not an RPG game, but there are things in there that like factions that you just mentioned there and choosing them and stuff. And I'm like, oh right, okay, yeah, I see that. So.
Yeah, but this is nice. They don't really lock each other out. You can, I think there's a fighters guild. You can go and, it's not really a guild, but you can go and be a gladiator in an arena and work your way up the ranks there. You can be in the mages guild, the thieves guild, or the dark brotherhood, which is shadowy Assassin's Guild, which has mild spoilers, but it's too funny not to share with you if you don't know. But they have just like the most sinister and off-putting recruitment technique, and I know that's what you'd expect from a band of assassins. But basically, another of my notes is be careful with your sword, because NPCs can die and will die. So, to be honest, the sort of slashing motion you make with your sword isn't very precise. It does feel better than I remember the old version being, but it's still not great. So if you're fighting and someone's helping you, more often than not, you're probably going to stab them a bit too. And if you accidentally kill someone, you will wake up to some guy in a dark hood standing at the foot of your bed being like, hello, I'm here to invite you to join the Assassin's Guild. You seem like a wrong un. It's very creepy.
Yeah. That's cool, though. I mean, it's cool because it's like, I mean, obviously completely unrealistic to real life, but at the same time, it is something different than you just go into a building to find them. Like, as in, you know, I guess that you can do. Can you do that?
I don't think you can with those guys. So some of the other ones
that's very cool.
Are a bit more. Like Mage's Guild, you can just walk through the door and be like, "Hello, I'd like magic."
Yeah.
But this is very much dependent on your actions, and I think it's a really interesting thing to do, and it's an offer. So if you kill that person by accident, you feel very bad about it. You go, "Oh no, thank you." Not right now.
I'm an accidental assassin.
But yeah, so you can do all these guilds, and they don't lock each other out. I think, if I remember rightly from when I did play it fully through on the old version, you can basically, I think, make your way right to the top of all of these and effectively have a monopoly on some of the most powerful institutions in Cyrodiil, and no one really notices, and no one ever comments on it either. No one's ever like,
not a conflict of
have
interest.
you declared your conflicts of interest for this year? Because I just noticed you've been going down to that abandoned cellar quite a lot. And I mean, you know, the Mages Guild is very against stabbing people.
It's like that scene on Mrs. Doubtfire, like when in the restaurant, like, just help is on the way, dear. You know, like, except you're in, you know, Oblivion. Anyway, sorry, I was going with that.
It does feel a bit like that.
I have the weirdest analogies. They're just like flashbacks, right?
So they have some fun quests, and again, there's something for most playstyles, I think, there as well. Whether or not you want to do more is up to you. And the other thing I've got to talk to you about is making friends and influencing people. So this is weirdly very dependent on your personality for some bits of the game. So particularly side quests, you've got a stat for your speechcraft, and it influences how much people like you or don't, and it's a skill you can level up. And the more somebody likes you, it might unlock different dialogue options. So there are some things where you might have more options if you can talk someone round, but you'd need to kind of raise their what's the word, affinity for you first. Otherwise they're just going to say, I'm not comfortable talking to you, stranger. This is the other thing. Everyone in Oblivion does talk quite literally. There's not a lot of subtlety to it. It's always things like, I don't feel very comfortable talking to you right now as we barely know each other. Wink, wink. And you're like, oh, the persuasion game. I should be doing that. There's more. And this is the most batshit game inside a game I've ever come across. So
Wait. When you came on and did the Eternal Investigations, there was mind chess. Now that sounded batshit crazy. This is more so?
Well, it sounded batshit crazy, but like in the game context, it made absolute sense. This does not. So, Fazz, I'm gonna run through how this feels in real life with you. This is your immersive experience. Do not eat that cola bottle. You need your mouth.
I regret saying that I enjoyed having you on the podcast, Fiona, because I always sound like a fucking idiot, and this is gonna sound... Although, wait, no, that happened. Wait, Richard, keep your mouth closed, Richard. You mean all the time? Okay, fine.
You're going to be in the role here of Oblivion cheese merchant.
Yeah,
and I need to get some cheese off you.
You will absolutely not be having any of my cheese. That's done.
I'm going to do my whole conversation to you, and then you just need to tell me what you feel about what you've just been through. You don't need to react at all between times. So,
I'm eating my cola ball.
Here we go. Fazz, you've got an incredible selection of cheeses. Just the best.
Thank you.
Did you know I'm actually the world's greatest cheese connoisseur? Like, the best. Seriously, just great. Awesome.
Okay, yeah. Don't feel comfortable with that, but it's fine. I feel like I might be. Oh.
Did you hear, by the way, there was a cheese factory just down the road. It blew up.
Uh-huh.
Debris was everywhere. Sure be a shame, Fazz, if something like that prevented you from making more cheese ever again.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Threatened. Annoyed about the brie joke. Also, yeah, really, like, that's like, wait, is it? Well, I'm so confused what's happened to me.
Right? It's conversational whiplash, and this is what you have to do. So you don't choose actual dialogue really in Oblivion. You do a bit for the main quests, but if you're talking to somebody just to try and raise their friendliness, you don't really say anything. What happens is there's a wheel on the screen that comes up, and it's got kind of 4 quadrants, and each of them is filled to a certain amount. So one will have like 1 point in it, one will have 2 points, 1 3 and 1 4, and each of these quadrants represents one of the 4 main and indeed only dialogue options, as we all know in polite conversation, which is admire, boast about something, joke about something, or like coerce or threaten someone. And you have to use each of those options once, and the idea is this wheel turns and you have to try and select the
Have you
best.
used them once, like in the same conversation?
Yeah, like I just did.
Yeah.
And the idea is that everyone likes some of these things more than others. So you have to try and get the bit of the wheel that has like 4 points in it into the particular conversational
area
angle that they like the most, and then the one with the littlest bit in it into the one that they hate, because that will remove points, whereas the other one will give you loads of points.
Okay.
And all the while, there's a timer ticking down in the middle of this, so you lose points as well for the longer you dither.
Are you aware? Sorry, are you aware at the start what they enjoy? Do you know what I mean?
Ish. So the first time you do it, it doesn't tell you. The first time you do it, all you get is when you start the game, you can move your mouse into the quadrant or your cursor, and with their terrible, terrible uncanny valley faces, they'll make a grimace for some of them and a smile for others. Yeah. So you can guess. And in the second round, because you normally have to do it for a few rounds before you actually really lift it high enough, the second time you go around, it'll colour them for you. So the red one will be the one you want to have on the smallest setting, and the green one will be the biggest setting that you want.
Okay.
But it leads to these ludicrous conversations because you're not saying anything or even selecting something to say. You're literally just ticking a box that says coerce, admire, joke. And because no one wants to sit around and listen to... I'm sorry, voice actors, but you must have known this. No one wants to sit around to hear them say the same lines of dialogue over and over again. So you have 3 rounds, and every time you say, coerce them, disconcerting, one of the things that they often say to you if they like being coerced is, talk tough to me, or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the coercion. No, you've answered the question.
Some of them love it.
Who likes it? You know?
But yeah, you'll hear these things over and over again, so you'll skip them. So you'll just get these half sentences, and it was driving Richard mad as I was doing it over and over again.
It's quite
to try and get answers
hear.
out of people.
Yeah.
But it is a bonkers mini
research.
game.
Shut the fuck up!
Something like that. It was like watching her trying to crack a safe or something like that, but the safe was someone's soul.
Yeah.
And really, lockpicking is relatively uncomplicated in this. But this they've made incredibly complicated. And I think it was one that a lot of people, when the remaster was launched, were quite worried that might not have made it, because it is such a weird and cumbersome thing, but they've left it in. Because, like it or not, it is very much part of the weird charm of the game, where sometimes you're like, why have you done that?
Yeah.
It works, but this can't be the easiest way you could have done this for you or for me. Persuasion good. You'll also come across loads of like really weird characters and stumble into quests, which is really fun. And I think the mark of a good kind of open world game is you stumble into things and you want to find out more. So often they're bits of quests that you haven't picked up yet. So I stumbled into this creepy village where everyone was suddenly like, we don't like strangers here. Because it was very like, League of Gentlemen. And so I tried to find where the quest was and go back and figure it out. There was one lady who did have a house full of cheese. Didn't have to persuade her to sell me any, but like she did, just did have a load of cheese.
Just had a lot of cheese.
Turned out later that was important.
Kindred soul.
And you get rumours from bars as well, so you can ask people what's going on in the area, and they often they'll say something that's not necessarily a rumour, but more something that you're like, yeah, I know, I was there, it just happened. That was me. I closed that Oblivion gate.
Yeah.
But sometimes they'll be like, oh, we hear there's weird murmurings down this old abandoned mine shaft, and it'll come up on your map then that you can go and have a look.
Yeah.
So that is nice. Apart from the conversational whiplash of the persuasion game, it does feel like you can get a lot out of like talking to people and wandering around. The thing I also have to mention here is that people will yell oddly personal comments in lieu of greetings. And I think this is probably the first instance of true Oblivion jank. Skyrim had the same thing, but probably not as much, I would say.
I don't think it quite got as personal.
No. So,
God.
I think because you can give your character a name or whatever, but no one knows it because it's an RPG. People, I think they decided that it was less weird for people to try and say something personal about you than it was just to say hello.
Yeah.
And stop. So there's a lot of weird things. So I was a dark elf, and people were saying hello Dunmer, which is like a word for a dark elf, but it's kind of like, I don't know, is it Australia where they call us limeys? Like if you went on holiday and everyone just said, g'day limey, but they didn't. No, I hadn't said anything at that point. I just walked into town. They took one look at me and were like, "You look like a bloody pom." Yeah. Like, weird. And then the worst ones are when your skills.
They can sniff that thing out. It's like they know. They know.
Maybe they do. But like the other ones are like where your skills get really high in certain things. People will comment on that too, which at best sounds creepy and at worst sounds like really sexual. So like one of them I've been getting a lot because I do a lot of illusion magic is. You have the hands of an illusionist.
Which is not wrong.
But weird. Yeah. And also, because I'm quite strong, look at the muscles on you. Okay, I'll be leaving this town now. I leave no forwarding address, I shan't be coming back.
Yeah. Wasn't there one that was something like you looked like you could really know how to move in light armour?
Yes.
Was that like weirdly specific?
They're all just a little bit off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look like you've mastered basic motor skills.
Yeah. I really want to use that in conversation at some point now, but then someone will know what it's from, and I want it to be natural.
It won't.
No. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. There's also a lot of the thing where you walk into a room like a pub or something. There's 6 characters in there, and they all start their like dialogue at once.
Excellent.
To give you the illusion that there's a busy room, but all it just sounds like is you've walked in, flipped some kind of switch, and everyone just starts shouting at each other. Yeah. We often like say that we've had like a Skyrim conversation because it's the same as Oblivion, where people will just NPCs will exchange information. They're not having conversations behind you in a sort of realistic way. They'll just say one thing, the person will go, okay, and then sometimes they'll just stand there for a little bit and then start a new conversation.
Yeah, or it'll be something like, oh, I've heard there's trouble in the next town over. Oh, that's a shame.
Did you know there's really cheap cheese down at Fazz's Cheese House?
No, there's not. I'm charged for a price.
And you can kind of hear the game stitching the conversations together from these like disparate parts, and it's quite something.
I was going to say, so is that almost not impressive necessarily, but at least it feels like there's a game engine whirring behind it to try and do something to make it into a realistic world.
Yeah, 2006 as well. It's probably more impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's exactly the kind of thing, like we mentioned earlier, where when they went back to have a look at what they could do for this particular version of it, I imagine with the kind of tech they would have been able to use nowadays, they could quite easily fix that. But I think that was a good example of exactly the kind of thing they wanted to leave in. Because it is just part of the charm, where you have these, like... It's not so much, like, a conversation, more like people trying to bludgeon each other with different sentences.
Swinging words around the room.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And sometimes they collide into a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost more like it would be luck than judgment, that it sounds like a coherent conversation, rather than like, oh, I won the lottery today. Oh, I hear there's a lot of cheese.
And then everyone just turns away and walks off,
And occasionally you get ones where the ones that sound closest to proper conversations, at least from me sort of hovering while you've been playing it, have been things that are almost more like, hello there, how are you? Good, thank you. Goodbye.
So yeah, it is an experience.
It's a vibe.
There's kind of 2 more bits to cover before I can let you do Atomfall.
That's pretty speedy for you so far. Well done. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, fair enough, good.
I've
got a couple of questions
at
the end as well. So
yeah, exactly. Participation's important.
Still an hour of my life.
I said sub an hour, under an hour.
One of the big points was, you've come out of your prison, you've charmed all the cheese sellers in Oblivion, and you've picked your guilds, and you're like, oh, maybe I should actually do the main quest a little bit. And I mean, you could, but even for the side quests, so there's some really good ones as well for the Daedra, so those kind of like demonic lords I mentioned about. So I think it's like a Daedric plane of Oblivion, where like lesser demonic things like live, but the actual Daedra are sort of counterpart to the gods that are also present in this, but they're much more fun. They're a bit like the sort of ancient Greek pantheon of like, some of them are just straight up murderous,
pissed,
some of them are quite morally grey, but they're kind of like capricious, like eldritch gods, which is a lot of fun, and they've all got like a different quest you can do for them where you can get some really cool gear, and I think one of them is like a stick that turns people into a chicken occasionally, and stuff like that.
Nice.
Sounds like the main storyline to me. I'm sorry. Why have I got any further for anything else?
If I had to tell you where to start, I'd say do some of those because they're really good fun. They're always bonkers. They're quite self-contained and short as well, and it kind of makes sense as well that you can dip in and out of them as you go around. Just when you find their shrines, you can do their quests.
Yeah.
But if you have managed to, do all the fun stuff and then go, okay, I should do the main quest. There's a couple of things to note. The first is once you start the main quest and get past a couple of bits of it, those bloody gates pop up pop up everywhere, and they just, so every so often it's an additional thing that you have to like leg it past in the woods, or get attacked by things, or you could go in and close them, but then you'd have to go on the fleshy gauntlet and like up Sauron's eye.
Again, a Weatherspoon's pub crawl, in all but name.
But yeah, you can go and do the main quest eventually, and I think with that, don't expect huge consequences.
Okay,
would be my tip. It's a bit. Again, I was trying to think of other kind of similar games like your Mass Effects and your Fallouts and even Skyrim. And I think often in those, there's much more of a consequence that you have on the world with your choices. No matter how artificial, like we were saying last time, it feels. There is some impact that you're having on the world around you. And there are little consequences here, but it's not on the scale of, Skyrim, you can choose which side of a civil war to support and ultimately help win. Obviously, Mass Effect, many different ways you can have a truly boring ending. And, the various Fallouts, that again, there's lots of different options depending on what factions you go for and what actions you take and how many cities you do or don't nuke and all that sort of thing. You're not really deposing leaders, you're not really picking sides in some big war. You might kill NPCs, whether by accident or because you choose the stabby assassin route. I think the most you've really got is a few changes in characters, perhaps, here and there. But no one ever really seems to think anything's changed. Like that guard who I just kited a lot of stuff into and then just like went about his day like everything was. There's none of that kind of knock-on effect on people.
It's not like he ever says, "Oh, you again," and I see you bought another bear.
No, so people do, respond to you as like the hero of Kvetch, which is one of the first towns you can help save if you've done that bit and stuff like that. But it doesn't feel consequential. It's just a thing they're saying to you. It's in your character, but it's not changed the world much. And there is a sort of fame and infamy system. So, broadly speaking, the more stuff you do that is like helping people or fixing problems or main questy kind of noble stuff, fame points. The more stabbies you do, the more infamy points you get.
Okay.
But even that, I felt really only influenced what people said to me. Because people know, Fazz, people know what
they would know. Yeah, they look in your pockets for your infamy points just spilling out.
It's quite a famous thing, I think, in Oblivion that the guards are like like, I don't know who does the fucking printing in Cyrodill, but like getting those wanted posters as soon as you've got a bounty, they're delivered much faster than you can get to the next city. If you get through the door and there's a guard in your face, and I do mean in your face, uncanny valley in your face, just going, "Stop right there, criminal scum!" And then you have to either go to prison, pay a fine, or do the dumb option and try and leg it, and inevitably get stabbed by 6 more guards. So like there are consequences like that, and I did do that sort of Holy Night quest early, which I do need to not recommend doing that actually. So the quest itself, very good. It did feel a bit Monty Python the Holy Grail, but in a good way. It felt like we were kind of cosplaying it being knights, but that was sort of the whole thing anyway, because it was an order coming back together. So people were new to this whole knight business. Yeah. You get a load of like lovely relics, armour, and powerful things. But I did have this problem with a curse, and I didn't realise it. I tried to help somebody, took on their curse, hadn't really clocked what that meant. And then for the next several hours of gameplay, and I mean my hours, not the gameplay's hours, every time I took a couple of big hits from someone's sword, I would just ragdoll to the floor. So normally when your stamina runs out, you just can't do big power moves or run very fast. But I think because the curse was draining me like -5 or something, as soon as I hit 0, it automatically went straight to -5, and I would get hacked to pieces, and I was only like level 8 or 9, so the rest of the quest was quite doable because everything levels with you. But then I kept on just falling over and dying horribly, and I had no idea why.
Was this the same quest where, like, a priest said something about going and changing into something more comfortable, and then he took all his clothes off? Just turned up in his undercrackers.
Excellent.
Yeah, so to be honest, that does probably bring me on nicely. I mean, the only other thing from that Fame and Infamy system, by the way, was like I couldn't wear my holy armour once I got a bit too stabby. But there is a way you can kind of go and redeem yourself.
I was going to say,
you do a pilgrimage.
Can you undo some of these things? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, because can you backtrack to a point where you become more neutral? Yeah,
they take the very sort of like, Confession Works approach, where you just sort of go and apologise at some god shrines, and they're like, okay, how many people? Oh, a few more prayers, now you're good now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can a bit. Okay. Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend doing that early on just because of the side effects. And yes, Oblivion jank. So my other tip is just embrace the jank. I mean, if you don't like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a buggy game in the sense that doesn't stop you playing, and these are all things that happened in the original too. I suspect they're slightly different things in the remaster, but the feeling is very similar. And yeah, there was one bit where I'd hired a new member of my knightly order. He was very excited. He said, "I'll go and get changed into something more befitting, a knight of these holy gods." And then I walked down into the cellar, and he obviously hadn't given him enough time to load his clothes in, because he's just standing there in his undercrackers.
So weird that that's included.
Hello, I'm ready. I'm like, I don't think you are. Is this the best we've got?
Oh, this hiring's gone wrong. I mean, there was down to HR.
There was that. There was a really early one where I was, again, just evidencing like how kind of interesting these side quests are and how good. I was spying on someone. Somebody thought they were being followed, so the natural thing to do was hire a complete stranger who'd just rolled in and was probably an ex-con to go and follow them for you to see, because that can only make it better.
Sensible.
So I was like sat in this, vineyard watching this person like do a sort of like bent over low sort of like raking motion, right? And there were a couple of other people in the field doing the same thing. Very much one of those games where the NPCs have their sort of clockwork system.
They're all doing the field at the same time.
And waited, and then it was time for her to go home. So I'm like, yes, I shall follow her. And then prepared to follow her. She gets up, starts striding away. Person beside her, still making the tilling motion, kind of gets stuck, but keeps moving. So he's like surfing, almost like crouched down. His legs aren't moving, but he's still making this little raking motion. It's like some kind of weird punt. And the best bit about this is that the way you sneak is in much like any other game where you crouch. Yeah. And then if you touch someone, you're pickpocketing them rather than just touching them. And obviously his little motion and his crouching downness doing it, he ended up like knocking into the back of her. She turns around, screams bloody murder, and all of the guards in this tiny place descend on this poor bloke and beat him to death.
Yes.
And she punches him out, and then she just starts back on her feet like nothing's happened. And then I had to go back to this guy, and he was like, "Was I being spied on? Was she doing anything strange?" And I was like,
yeah.
I know what the game answer is, but it's not what I saw.
No, she was legit. She was like, she was proper crazy.
I wouldn't mess with her. I just cease your investigation now.
Yeah.
There was that. I once got attacked by several thousand goblins. Like, there was something I played it the first time I played Oblivion. It's quite an early quest you can do, saving someone's farm from goblins. It's like a bit of a wave thing. You get maybe 3 waves of goblins, maybe 4 or 5 each time. The last one, something just glitched in the game, and I got like about 35 goblins who just like swarmed. I couldn't even see the NPCs I was meant to be protecting because these goblins were all over. I was like, that's a reload. Yeah. So I think, and one final one that I've really enjoyed is also, maybe if you don't enjoy being stalked by Terminators, essentially, for the whole of the rest of your game, do not go and do one of the Daedric quests where you go and, like, free some ogres from a mine. Or if you do, don't do what I did and free them and then run away really happy that I haven't had to kill and fight all the guards, because, again, it's a glitch of some kind, but they just follow you.
No.
I checked, I'm not the only one. Again, sometimes I go through a door and these, like, guards, like, hired heavies from this mine are just there going, like, no second chances, that's what I say. But then they just stand there.
And you're like,
so, like they make
what's
the
that
threat.
mean? What's that mean exactly?
Yeah, and you have to sort of, like, try and dodge to get past the animation, because it will just keep, like, restarting and restarting until you manage to sidestep so you're not in line of sight anymore. And then you can run away from this conversation.
Where'd they go?
Yeah, so there's still a lot of jank, but I don't think any of it is game breaking. I mean,
I enjoyed the conga line of sheep.
that was good. There we go. Yeah.
There's conversations that you accidentally can start standing on a table, and people are just like, sure, that's normal. Yeah. I tried to assassinate a guy, and I came in, and I thought maybe he'd be having his lunch at his table where I'd put the poisoned apple. But he was just stood on his table with one foot in the air, and I was like, okay.
He had that curse happen to him. He was just like,
yeah. But none of it really breaks the game. The only thing I'd say is just, much like Skyrim as well, it is worth saving quite a lot. Probably should have told you this as one of my first tips, to be honest, because it does have that thing of the music changes ominously and you're like, oh fuck, what's following me? Yeah. And if you do get a glitch that is really terrible, you can always back out. But none of them have been like game breaking. If anything, I think they add character and charm. But I can't tell how much of that is because the original had that too, and I've got that kind of fuzzy feeling of, that was a nice game for its time, wasn't it? I don't know. Would I be more annoyed if I'd spent a bit more money on, say, a Cyberpunk? So mind you, Cyberpunk, I think, was game breaking, wasn't it?
Yeah, when it first came out. I think a lot of the time people were really struggling with it. But yeah, a lot of hard work and got it sort of back on track. No Man's Sky as well, I think, was another one where it came out, but I guess that one was like kind of light on content rather than broken necessarily.
Yeah. So yeah, I think overall, really enjoyable. The jank is charming in the most part, and I guess if it's not, you probably already know that it's not the sort of thing you can tolerate.
Yeah.
I think it genuinely is quite funny, but probably not on purpose in quite a lot of places.
Yeah.
And I really think the way that your character develops is still a really good example of genuinely feeling like your playstyle influences the character, whereas I feel like more games nowadays in this sort of setup allow you to build in what you want to your character rather than you've done a lot of this, you'd be good at that thing now.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of pros. I would recommend it. I do think it's very long. If you don't like that, it's not for you.
So I was reading that, looking at some of the games that you played and things, and a lot of Final Fantasies that you played were sort of, if you were going to finish the main quest, for example, it was like 50 hours. And I did see a big variance in Oblivion, so much it was like you could probably get through the main quest if you just played the main quest like in 30 hours, but it's like you could play 80.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you have a better experience doing that than you would do if you just did the main quest, from what you were saying there, in terms of you get way more out of the game if you go and explore a hell of a lot more in this one. Is that just like fact?
I think so, because I think the main quest is the bit that everyone does, and the bit that Oblivion does really well, and the bit that it is trying to sell you on is you make your own character and you make your own way in this world. I think there's a bit at the start where there's some throwaway line that Patrick Stewart says on your way out of jail, being like, whatever you did beforehand, it doesn't matter now. So you never find out what you did to put you in that prison, but everything you do from that prison is entirely your choice, whether you do the main quest or not. Probably might want to eventually for some closure and also to get rid of those annoying doors, but everything else, you could buddy up with all the eldritch weird gods, the Daedra, you could become the archmage, you could steal from every rich person you see, or you could just spend like loads of time going around finding weird villages and trying to figure out what on earth is going on and why everyone is so paranoid. There's just a lot to do, and I think it's a really personalisable... No. You can personalise the experience.
Yeah, it's been a long hour, don't worry.
It's very customisable in a way that a lot of games aren't, and it has a much more organic feel because you stumble onto a lot more things than I think you do in some more modern games.
Okay, cool. So the last couple of questions before I give it a score then. So let's start with the critical darling sort of situation that it was Game of the Year in 2006. Does that still feel that way, like now, even like, and with the remastered parts and stuff? Does it still feel like one of the best games ever made? Effectively, if it's going to get Game of the Year sort of situations and stuff, or is it, even taking the jank out of it and that kind of side of it, does it still feel like a really great game to play?
This is a bit that I ran out of time to research because I was playing it too much. But I was wondering this, like, thinking about what else was out in 2006, I didn't game much in 2006 because I was very young, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, no, hang on, that's the wrong way around. I wasn't very... No. What makes me sound...
It's
young?
fine.
Do you know what?
Either way.
We're on a retro podcast.
Yeah.
School, are they? But I think I'd have been like, last year or so of school kind of thing, and still didn't really play many games on a very regular basis. Probably a bit Tomb Raider and stuff like that, and this would have been one of the more ambitious games, which is probably why I could never survive an Oblivion Gate. I still really can't. Several years later. But I think it must be right. I think there's so much in it that you see so many other places, and I wonder how much of that was the first or an early game to be really popular and kind of manage to land some of those mechanics convincingly. It's doing a lot. Even today it's doing a lot. Things like customisable spells. I'm sure some games have it somewhere, but I'm trying to think of like big mainline ones that I've played that haven't. I just can't, because it gave you so many options, but it didn't feel like it overwhelmed you because you could still be like, I don't care, I'll just buy it.
I mean, I guess like 2006 Game of the Year. Sure. 2025 Game of the Year.
No, it's not. It's not, is it?
Yeah, but then I guess the to flip the argument, without Oblivion, would you have some of the other massive open world RPG type experiences that you do have nowadays? I would argue perhaps not. Maybe, because I think it did bring stuff to the table. Fee, how about that?
Yeah, I was just... No, you made me think that... Another thing I was thinking was... One thing that I have enjoyed going back into Oblivion is that actually sometimes I find some of the bigger open world games too big. And they're either too big or they're trying to do too many things, or, one of my pet hates is the feeling that you have to do some of the side quests to understand some of the lore and stuff like that. And you can definitely... There's a load of books that you could ignore, which I believe most people might do, or you could read them all and understand everything that's ever happened in Tamriel, but you don't have to. And I think Oblivion feels like a really good size because you don't have to walk for very far before you spot something looming on your marker that you can go towards and investigate. But you also don't feel compelled to do certain things that you're not inclined to other than the main quest line. It's a good size, and I don't think we get that very right now, and I think everything that you do feels very well thought out. The quests are really interesting, a lot of them. There's one in the Dark Brotherhood where you do like a reverse murder mystery. You're all locked inside a house. You're the murderer, you know that, but no one else does. And you have
Was
to
it
try
accidental?
you have to try and pick them off without them suspecting, and it's really interesting to do something very different like that. That isn't, it isn't go and find this ancestral crap that I've dropped down a well. There is a lot of that, don't get me wrong, but they've worked really hard to make them all feel different. I just think the bigger a game gets, the more it does feel like, go and find my insert object here and bring it to place on the other side of map here and defeat the bad guy, insert name here.
So, I mean, considering that, and considering our chat recently about Red Dead Redemption versus Red Dead Redemption 2, and it feel like 2 feeling a bit more sort of bloated and all that kind of stuff, I guess by that logic, Oblivion, pretty good. Skyrim, basically bang on. Elder Scrolls 6 will probably be a massive over-bloated.
Don't tell me that. I've been waiting for years.
But I think there's echoes of that kind of thing where, like, because I'd agree, even just from like the bits that I've played and watching you play it, it feels like it's sort of more in what my kind of personal happy middle ground would be for a kind of open world game, and a kind of eclectic range of experiences within that. It's not like a kind of Ubisoft game where you can do 900 things, but it's actually 450 of the same thing a couple of times, or 2 things however many times over. In Oblivion, in Skyrim, it's that mix of stuff that I think is the key bit for me.
So, touching on a couple of points there that was kind of part of my next question, joined together. So, value for money, paid about £50 on PS5. It's on Game Pass for the Xbox.
Ooh.
Day one, which is great as well. So, did you feel like you got your value for money for £50 playing? I mean, obviously you had not played it all the way through the first time, but do you think it was worth paying £50 for the remaster for that?
Well, I played it all the way through when I played it on the Xbox.
Apologies.
Although I think that cost us like £2.50 at CES.
Something like that.
So that's what I mean. Like, as in, could you just say pay the £2.50 now and still play Oblivion? Or
I think you've got a choice. I think it depends what you want from your game. I am already about 50 hours in. I've not really touched much of the main quest, apart from to pick up Sean Bean and deposit him in a place of safety while I do all his work for him.
Which is what everyone's main quest in real life is. We should all be working.
You're finally safe, Sean. We fixed it. We fixed the curse.
Cheers, lass.
It's all I want. Now I think
dressed as sharp.
I think there's there's probably a mod for that. There's a lot of modding in the old Oblivion that I never dipped into, but it's out there. I think you could absolutely go and pick up Oblivion for a few quid, old school Oblivion, and play it. I think I'd recommend that if you have played a little bit before and just want to try something a bit different, or if you don't mind older controls and a bit more clunkiness in some of the sword swinging and things. I think the remaster, for me, is really great. I think just the change in how it looks is great, because it's nice to just feel really immersed in that world. And I think, for me, the quality of life stuff around... I know I said the sword play is terrible, and it kind of still is, but it's much better than it was. And I think some of those little quality of life things, the UI stuff, I didn't really know. Again, like I was saying about comparing it to what was in my head, I didn't really notice till I compared it on some websites that had explained the differences. I was like, oh, it was much clunkier and almost a bit childlike in places, and now it's a bit more like what you expect, but still has that old style. So I think it is really worth playing today with the updated version if you do have that money and you want to give it a proper run through. I think you'll have a really great time. It just is an investment, but I think it's nice in that because it is the same game, really, you sort of know already, and there's enough reviews out there of both versions that you've got a good idea when you pick it up of if it's for you or not.
Cool. Okie dokie. Quick score before I ask my last question. Both of you.
I'm gonna go 8, I think.
Okay, same as Mass Effect.
Oh no, is that same as Mass Effect? Oh, no.
It is the same as Mass Effect.
Okay.
He doesn't have. Don't you know?
I'm looking at the
No.
spreadsheet.
We only give out 11 numbers here, including the 0. So.
Yeah, maybe it's 7.5 then. I think it's somewhere between a 7 and 8. You know, I think it's depending on how willing you are, and sometimes the jank was a little frustrating, but. Yeah, so we'll go 7. We'll be conservative because Mass Effect didn't have me occasionally having to reload the whole game because somebody glitched through a wall and I couldn't get to them.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, fair enough. Cool. So the last question I had for you both really was that this shadow dropped basically, so like no one knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, it did.
So A. Obviously that was very exciting, but also B, that it kind of shadow drops like a couple of days or before or after or in between, like when Clair Obscure Expedition 33 Game Elect of 2025 was also coming out. How do you guys feel about that in terms of like whether or not that's like a nice thing to do or not to an indie studio? I think it's okay because Clair Obscure seems to be everyone's critical darling as well, but do you think that was like, you know, from a game sort of industry point of view, do you think that's a shitty move or do you think that's completely legit and it's okay to do?
Just think you even checked. I don't know, like I'm not as
they both
in
came out
touch
on
with
Game
the
Pass.
regular news about games as you are, so I hadn't really heard of Clair Obscure, and I don't know. I don't know why they chose the timing they did. It was very dramatic and very exciting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it was anything to do with the studio, really. I think it would have just been bad luck. But we did say it was a bit like rubbish for them to have that overshadow.
Yeah. I would have to check whether or not the studio, I can't remember the name, of Expedition 33 are owned by Microsoft as much like Bethesda are. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, because I'm feeling a bit like if they're both there, that's weird. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Someone at head office is getting fired.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Just,
Gary,
Rich,
you didn't check the schedules.
You got any feelings on that or anything? Do you think it's like, you know?
I mean, I guess assuming that they're not both owned by the same company somewhere along the line, I guess they might have been aware that stuff was coming out, but not necessarily what it was.
Okay.
And I guess going down that route, there's no guarantee of what you're going to run up against and all that kind of stuff. It's got to come out at some point, and if you've got this big showcase coming and you can make a big splash and get people talking about it by shadow dropping it, I get it. And I guess, you know, you have the flip side and you get GTA 6 being delayed and suddenly everybody's trying to rush to fill the gap because they were avoiding it like the plague. So, I mean, yeah, like, these things will always throw you curveballs, I guess. So I think on balance, all things considered, yeah, it's fair game. Probably just dumb luck that it didn't run up against something else that they would have looked for, like major other releases and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's probably fine. But yeah, you would have had a bunch of stuff getting lost in that kind of vortex. Just going, oh, bloody Oblivion.
Like Power Wash Simulator would have been, you know, absolutely swallowed up by those two games.
You know, there's all these sorts of bits and bobs that's, you know, there's so much stuff that's all like vying for attention anyway. Having something like that suddenly come out of nowhere and get all of the attention is not great. And we've sat here for what, hour and a quarter talking about it, and you know, we're not the only people. You know? So yeah, I could see why it would be frustrating for some people, but as a marketing exercise, I get it.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Cool. So I'm going to super segue quickly into Game Pass era-esque stuff. Like, and so Atomfall. The reason I kind of sort of said I was going to try and... I knew it was going to run quite long, this podcast, but I was a bit like, no, I do need to kind of like put this in here because I wasn't planning on reviewing it. And I actually wrote these notes about 2 months after I'd played it, and I was trying to remember back to it, what I kind of felt around it. Because the reason is because I don't play RPGs necessarily, but this is kind of like a survival action first-person game with RPG, tiny little bits of elements. And a lot of things that you said, for example, kind of... It was interesting. I was like, oh, right, okay, I can see that being in Atomfall. So it's made by Rebellion Games. They are mostly famous for the Sniper Elite games, which I've only really started to dip into recently. They're quite fun, quite small worlds. This is also quite a small world, really. So you can. I mean, I've seen a speedrun of this game one outcome in this game done in like 3 hours. Like there is a way of making that happen. So for something that's meant to be like an open world sort of, you know, RPG light, to see that kind of availability to do that is that kind of appealed to me when I heard that kind of thing could be done. I was like, okay, I can see myself playing this now. So I found myself playing it. Another reason that I thought it would be sort of having an affinity with me was that it's an alternative history sort of thing, which I quite dig those kind of vibes. Set in Cumbria, in the aftermath of the wind scale disaster in 1957. So it, you know, all those kind of things, nuclear sort of disasters. I don't know why I find them interesting, but I do. That, you know, like, you know, Cumbria. I'm from Cumbria, so yeah, I was all about that. So and it's one of those things where it's funny. I've written down sentences of things that you said about, in terms of Oblivion and stuff. Like, for example, you never find out what you did, like, as in, so you never find out who you are in Atomfall, like, as in you're basically cast into this sort of world basically where this disaster's happened and there is a quarantine zone and you wake up in it and a scientist just goes, just like Patrick Stewart does, it's just like, help us out, and it's just basically, and then
You'll
it's
do.
just, yeah, exactly, honestly, it's just so like that, and you're like, okay, fucking hell, yeah, fine, and, you know, and then you go outside the telephone box, and the telephone box has this really crazy voice that's just going, you know, you must find the interchange, you know, Oberon must die, and then phone's down, you're like, huh?
Happen a lot in Cumbria.
Yeah, to be fair, it's very, very eerily similar.
Can I just chip in to say, like, when you said that, I just realised that, like, all of these setups of nameless protagonists in like fantasy settings or alternate realities are basically just what happens in the real world. Where, like, you know, you think as a kid, like, oh, bear with me. You think as a kid, there's definite things where, like, you're super talented, you're the chosen one, you're the only one who can save us, and that's the thing that happens to people. And then you grow up and you're like, oh my god, it was just the person who was there and looked available to do the job. People are like, well, someone needs to sort it, and you've been here long enough for 2 seconds, so well done.
Stepping up.
And, like, you get that entire feeling the whole way that you play through this. It is just sort of, so something else, I guess that I'm not going to go into the story much more, because I'd say the fun part of this is that it's almost a bit of a detective story in its own way, that you get nudged down certain paths by the game to go and find out different things, but it's all kind of driving towards this place called the Interchange. There are different parts of this map that are set in this beautiful Cumbrian sort of Lake District setting, and it looks like all these sort of, you know, slate sort of hills and things, and it looks great and it plays absolutely fine. You know, it's interesting. It's a bit, it's nothing like it, but also a bit like Bioshock. And it's a bit Fallout-y in its sort of feeling. It's definitely all about the exploration. There's no fast travel, so it was interesting that you were sort of saying, and you were, no horse to fucking contend with.
I've been to the Lake District. Yeah, that can't be easy.
No. So it's like it kind of like it expects you to spend the whole time running, which a lot of people have kind of come back and said that's really shit. I quite enjoyed it. I felt like I was out on a bit of a jaunt, a bit of a walk, sort of, you know, like around the lakes. Oh, you know, that is in, here's some enemies here, you know. But yeah, it's just like you follow clues and you're solving mysteries, and then, like you said about factions. So there are this whole game feels like a side quest in Oblivion to me, almost, from your description.
Yeah.
Like, as in, so part of that is that the whole game is that you kind of choose factions as you go. It does distill down towards the end of the game where you have to choose one, and you get 6 different endings basically. But you have to choose one of those things. But it's really late on, right towards the end, where you can, if you saved your game at a certain point, you could probably go back and track to different parts of the map and complete different parts of a faction and change your mind. Mm-hmm. So if you save it at the right point and actually give yourself that option still available to you, it's great, because that's still there. But the issue is that it all kind of distills down to fetch quests as well, right at the end. Again, another point you were making, where it is literally you are trying to find these things called atomic batteries. Like, you know, you can guess what they do to power this interchange, to find out about the final mystery of the story. And all you're kind of doing is just going to different parts of the map, kind of at the command of different factions. The factions themselves are quite interesting, and all their motivations are quite interesting, but you're still just doing the same thing. You're still just going to go and find out where this atomic battery is for this reason, so you can open a door. And it's just like, and you're just trying to open different doors at the end in this interchange. And so I kind of got to that point where, like, I thought at one point I could feasibly see myself trying to do all these different endings. And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, oh, fucking hell, I'm just going to do one because I just have to keep on finding these fucking batteries. Like, is it just like, it's really annoying. Like, and this kind of, like, again, this is why I keep using the word kind of. It seems to take little bits from different other games and things. Like, there's a little bit of a skill tree, and there's a little bit of sort of a magic sort of element where you get this sort of thing called training stimulant, and it kind of boosts your powers in certain ways. And there's a variety of different weapons, but the combat's a bit weird, and it's mostly a looting based system. So a lot of the combat is hand to hand. It kind of feels like it's trying to borrow from like 50 different games and just takes a little bit and kind of sticks it to this sort of ball that it rolls down a hill, like a Katamari, if you will. But like, it never really coagulates into its own thing. And it was just interesting to kind of hear all the different things that Oblivion does, and you just see snippets of it in this game amongst the large amount of running that you do across the countryside, which is quite a nice jaunt.
Is it the kind of thing that you could almost imagine if they ever did like an Atomfall 2 would grow into its own a little bit?
Yeah, and that's the reason I want to speak about it a little bit, because there was a DLC just dropped last week that I didn't actually know was happening until friend of the podcast, Bertie, told me about it. He's like, oh, this is winning me. And I looked, it's £15, and I was like, am I going to spend £15 on a game that I've not yet completed, that I quite liked? I think I probably liked it a little bit more than other people in certain ways, but it was, inverted commas, free via Game Pass, so therefore I had not, I didn't have to worry about putting it up, picking it up and putting it down. Maybe if I'd bought it full price, for example, like for the 56 quid or whatever, then I'd been like, I'm going to try everything and finish it all off. Whereas, because it's on Game Pass, and this is an inherent sort of thing with Game Pass, is that you can kind of just pick it up and put it down and go, I don't have to play the rest of that. Do you know what I mean? And I've played one ending, I don't have to play 6 endings, especially because the one ending took me 8 hours, for example. And the fact that you can do one ending in 3 hours. But yeah, I think that, so with the DLC, I'm a bit like, oh, do I pay the £15? And I'm a bit like, which isn't a total rip-off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think it's like a whole new area, a whole new island to go to. But yeah, I don't know. Like, as in, I can see that I feel like they might add more to it, and it might be one of those things that's like No Man's Sky, for example, where people go, oh, it's like Uncontent to start off with, but we're going to add bits to it, and it might improve over years. So it's hard to give it a full review, because I do genuinely think there will be something that you'd add on to, but I don't think when they released it, anyone ever spoke about that.
Yeah, it just feels a bit like it's an early access.
It feels like they should do that. It's basically what it feels like. Yeah, so it's funny because the story's so open to you, in so much that the clues aren't very necessarily clear, and you can actually, it's really quite nice that there is rather than a sort of difficulty scale necessarily, there is a bit of change of difficulty to it, but it's also a bit more. You can make things more obscure, so you can make the clues even harder to find, or you can make them hit you in the face with a stick and say, go this way, go that way. So that's kind of cool, but again, on the flip side of that, Oblivion sounds like it does that in a natural way, whereas Atomfall does it in a menu at the start. It's just like, so it's very much a 2025 thing of, we can make this however you want to make it, but we're going to do it in a menu. So yeah, I don't want to go into it too much more, because it'll give a lot away, really, but it just feels a bit underdeveloped in a lot of areas. You never really get, like the twist in BioShock. You never get that. That is in that you kind of get like a little mini twist that you kind of like, eh. Like some of the storylines is like, the one storyline that I finished actually is all to do with being part of a cult, and that was probably the one that was most, when I read up about kind of some of the storylines you go down, that was, after I'd finished that one, I was like, I wonder which one would be the one that I next would maybe do. But that one seemed like, after I read it, I was like, I think I did the most interesting one. It's like, so I was a bit like, that one was fine. A lot of them feel a bit more generic.
Right.
Go and help the army over here, or go and help, this scientist over here. Whereas this one was like, oh, go and help this cult because you're hearing voices in the soil and stuff. And it's like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I don't know what's going on. Well, that'll lead to. But yeah, it just never really kind of gets to that. There's no emotional trauma like in BioShock necessarily, apart from not really knowing who you are. there's no skill progression necessarily. Really, there's like a few bits. It's just such a weird bitty game that I feel like it's just a bit of a warm shrug, like as in like yeah, it's like yeah, okay, I see what you're trying to do. But I think it's really apt that I could fit like a review in at 10 minutes at the end of an hour and 10 minutes of Oblivion, because that's what it feels like. It feels right that is the case.
Can I ask, is it because I was really intrigued by this game, and it might have been on my list had not Oblivion crashed into my life, but I think I was interested because it looked like a cool premise. And it looked like it might have that sort of like, alternate history, retro-futuristic maybe vibe that I really like. But the thing that really interested me was it's in Cumbria.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. But did it feel like realistically set here? You know, like we talked about, like, thank goodness you're here quite a lot for being a really good but really unusual representation of what it's like living in the UK, because sometimes you get a very caricatured thing of any country that pops up in a video game, don't you? So,
I mean, the other one that comes to mind is Everyone's Gone to the Rapture as well, where it did Shropshire, where
I haven't done that one.
It very much looks like Shropshire and all that kind of stuff. But I guess the plot could have been anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely not as nailed on as Thank Goodness You're Here, but at the same time, there probably that next level up of feeling British enough. In so much like the characters and the way that they speak, and also the setting looking like you are in the Lake District. That is in, so I can imagine that I genuinely was pleased. That it's just like is in like light.
It's an unusual corner of the UK to pop up in a game, right?
Yeah. And so I was pleased to see it and almost get that feeling of like I did feel like I was in a certain area of the lakes, but not so much that it drilled down into like. The local pub was full of like people calling each other jam eaters, like working in Whitehaven sort of thing. It's my favourite insult. They both call each other jam eaters. It's a bit weird, and also it is an actual insult to people that used to go down the mine because they couldn't afford to put meat in their sandwiches. Like, that's like where it comes from. So, but so it doesn't go to that level of things.
Right.
If it did, I would immediately be giving it more points because that's in. So, but
incidentally, if you are hiring for a localization person for Atomfall 2,
wait a minute. But it felt like it was almost a bit like Doctor Who, Dad's Army, Last of the Summer Wine, but again light. Like as in just it just didn't go into it deep enough on that level. But I was interested. I would be upset if I'd paid full price for this game, though. That's what it felt like to me. That is, if someone said, "Oh, you paid £50 for this game," I would be like, I would be angry about it. I think probably that is in. So, but not to the point where I'm like, I don't recommend it. I think I'll probably get a 5 out of 10. I think that it's interesting. There are good ideas there. They're just not fleshed out. The gameplay is generally pretty good. The combat's a bit iffy. A lot of the sort of quests early on are interesting. You get later down the game and it just starts to become fetchy boring quests. Go and find this item, and it's just like I did get to a point where, and this probably isn't a good thing for what you'd think that has something with RPG elements, is after 6 hours I was like, kind of done here, so yeah, it's interesting enough, and I do think that it would be good if I heard like absolutely stellar things about we'll bring out 5 or 6 DLC and it's 30 quid or whatever in 2 years' time, and there's more to it. But you're just not guaranteed that's going to be the case.
No.
So.
And they shouldn't rely on that either. I don't think there's quite a few things that come out with DLC already prepped to go, which I find very suspicious.
They must have with this.
Give me the game, and then if it earns the DLC, give me the earned DLC.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think that if you own a PlayStation and the DLC isn't free with the physical copy you bought, then I think that's absolute horseshit. Whereas if you had Game Pass and you have to pay for the DLC, I can kind of understand that almost a bit more, certainly. But yeah, so it's all right enough. It's just on the right side of. I recommend people to go and check it out and go through one of the storylines probably, because you could do it, very quickly. You could do it in a weekend. I'm not sticking around for it though. So yeah. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It was like it did feel like the side quest side quest in Oblivion. So, but yeah, cool. Okay, we're hitting 1 minute, 1 hour and 33 minutes. So we'll probably sign off now.
What's your score?
Oh, 5 out of 10 it was. Yeah, 5 out of 10.
Oh, did you say I didn't listen?
No, I don't blame you. No,
it's
fine.
on the spreadsheet. It is official.
Okay.
That's how much it was worth. It wasn't worth listening to, but but yeah, thanks very much for listening, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.